Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the November meeting of Greater Duffyfield Residents Council. This is a joint meeting along with the Bern Police Department and the professionals from ShotSpotter. We don't intend to hold you long tonight. We hope that we can get in here, get the presentation, and your questions, answer your questions, and so that you can feel comfortable going back and discussing this with your neighbors, and letting us and the chief and everybody know if you feel comfortable supporting this worthwhile mission. So with that, again, we say welcome. We're going to start with an invocation from, I call the mayor of Duffyfield, our own, our elder, Ms. Sampson, and then from there, you're going to hear from our chief, police chief, Pat Gallagher, and he will take us through the evening and share with you guys how he will address taking questions, so forth and so on. So again, welcome. Sit back and just ask some good questions.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord. I do wait a second. Okay. Good evening. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just want to say thank you one more time. Dear Lord, we thank you for this gathering of community leaders to discuss situations in our community. Now, God, as we go forward this evening, oh God, let us all be on one accord. Oh God, let us plan what is best for the entire community. So God, we just want to say thank you for the leadership of this organization, and we thank you for our officials that always make sure that all citizens are safe. These and all other blessings we ask in your name, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor.
Thank you so much. This is all. A little technical difficulty, but we'll get past it. I'm certain of that. We do want to have. Okay. All right. For now, we're working. All right. So we do want to make sure that we have the audio, because we are videotaping this, so that anybody that could not be here tonight would be able to listen to, review, and better understand what it is we're trying to do and what the ShotSpotter program will actually achieve here in Duffyfield. But before I go any further, I want to provide some introduction to some people. Back off again. Oh, well, there you go. So I do want to introduce a few people. I want to introduce Alderman Barbara Best for being here. Thank you for supporting this event. From the Board of Aldermen perspective, I want to thank my boss, Marvin Williams, for being here as well from the city manager's office. And not last, but certainly before I get to the last person, I want to thank a partner of mine. I have no better partner in law enforcement than Sheriff Chip Hughes, who came out tonight to support this event. And of course, last but not least, I never take or miss an opportunity to talk about my favorite person, Dr. Reverend Sampson, for being here tonight. Most of what you want to hear tonight is not from me, but I will be here to answer any questions that I can answer as it relates to what the Bern Police Department is doing in terms of trying to curb violence in this community. But what you do want to hear is really the technical side of what ShotSpotter does. And I have been before this board or this group twice to talk about what ShotSpotter is. And I was asked many questions about issues about privacy and about what the program does or maybe doesn't do, and I made it very clear, I'm not a subject matter expert. We need to bring subject matter experts here so that You still can't hear me? I can only talk but so loud. I'll do the best I can. But you want to hear from them. They are the ones that are going to be able to answer your questions. But the one thing I want you to keep in mind as we progress tonight, I was asked by a reporter, only 2 days ago in fact, the question and the answer never made it on television. So I will tell you what the question was. The question was, will ShotSpotter adversely impact any one group of people? And I said, oh, most certainly, yes. There is a group of people that do not want ShotSpotter in your community. And these are the persons that have no care or sympathy for human life. They are firing a deadly weapon in your community. And what comes out of the business end of a firearm is non-discriminatory. Whatever it hits, it will destroy. And we all know what happened to 19-month-old Neilani Sheptop. And I was asked this question too. Well, was it because of her death that we're here today? And I said the answer to that is simple. It's yes, but not in and of itself yes. Neilani was one name in a series of names. And I provided some statistics at the last Board of Aldermen meeting where I talked about the 4 people that died and the 7 people that had to go to a hospital over the past 2 years in just this neighborhood because of gun violence. So that is the reason that I have been very vocal about wanting to bring this technology. Oh, there we go. All right. Now we're cooking with gas. This is why I have been very vocal in trying to bring this technology to this community. So with that, I want to introduce Paul and Deb, and they are from Sound Thinking, and they'll tell you what is Sound Thinking. I thought we were talking about ShotSpotter. Well, they'll tell you about that. They're the subject matter experts. They came in. They do not live in New Bern. In fact, Deb doesn't even live in North Carolina. Paul, do you live in North Carolina? Yeah. Paul is from, I don't know, someplace up north. I've never heard of it. He's from a place up north called New York. One of the things I did say was tonight at 8:30, the Carolina Panthers are on TV tonight, so spare with a number of you may want to find yourself in front of the TV. So we do want to move this thing along. So with that, who should start? Deb. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, Chief Gallagher, for having us here today. Can everybody hear me? Are we on?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming and caring about the community and caring about what ShotSpotter can do for your community. First up, I'll tell you a little bit about our company, and then I'll let Paul get into the nitty-gritty of it all. The company now is Sound Thinking, formerly ShotSpotter. We've been around for 27 plus years. We're currently deployed in over 150 cities across the country. Something we're very proud of is we have a 99% retention rate, which means cities and towns that do take us on stay with us. And we're very proud of that. And the reason for the name change is, like I said, 27 years we've been ShotSpotter. Now the name of the company is Sound Thinking. Because what we learned is it's not just about detecting the gunshot to solve crimes and save lives. It's a whole lot more than that. So now we have a whole safety platform that is geared mainly to do just that, save lives and solve crime. So what's happening, how will ShotSpotter benefit New Bern? Well, you'd be surprised to hear that less than 20% of gunfire incidents are reported to 911. That doesn't mean that the community doesn't care. I'm sure that all of you, if you hear gunfire, you're calling it in. It's certainly not about that. But what we've learned is people will sometimes think, is it gunfire that we're hearing? Is it possibly fireworks? Is it a dump truck that's down on the pavement? Is it helicopter whirring? And then there's, well, I don't really know I'm not really sure if that's it. I'm sure somebody else is calling with more information, so I don't want to send the police department on a wild goose chase. I'll just let them handle it. And then there's retaliation. What happens if I call the police department and a cruiser shows up in my driveway, and now all of a sudden my family might be not be safe right now. There's a retaliation. They may become the victims. So there's that. And then one that really kills me to say is that citizens might not call because we're used to living in an area where there's gunfire. Or even worse, the police don't care. Where if we called, there's gunfire happening, and the police don't show up. And that is certainly not the issue that's happening. That's why we're here, because the New Bern Police Department does care. They care about you, and they want to make sure that you're safe, and that these crimes are solved. That's really possible. So what this can do is get the police, first of all, because of the technology, the police will be notified in less than 60 seconds. We're promising on our agreement that the alerts will be notified in 60 seconds. So even when there is a call that's made by 911, a lot of times it's sitting, you're talking to your spouse saying, should we call? What do you think? Let's make that call. And sometimes 15, 20 minutes, half hour can go by before that call can even get made. In this case, because of this, the police department will be notified within 60 seconds. So what that means is they're going to show up at that scene, which that scene is going to be, they're going to be given a 25-meter radius. So they'll know pretty much where they're going in that circle. And in that circle, they could potentially find suspects. They're showing up they're getting that notification within 60 seconds so they can get to that crime scene. They have potential to find suspects, potential to find gun cases, to find casings, potential to find victims, and potentially be, if not dead, major incident. So to be able to get there that fast, and not only what they could potentially find in that radius, they're going to know, is it more than one person? What kind of shooter is it? Is it an automatic weapon? Is it a drive-by? Is it a moving vehicle? Is it the gunshots will be time-stamped? They'll know where the gunfire is taking place and when. So there's a lot of great benefits, and not to mention that they're also safer going into it. They know exactly where they can go around where there could be potential gunfire taking place. They see a street view as to where they're going. They can actually hear the gunfire, so they'll know what exactly they're up against. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Paul to show us a video and answer any questions that you might have. Again, thank you very much for coming here today.
Appreciate that. So, there are a few things that I want to address. We've heard some concerns. Your folks have shared those with us. We're going to make sure we address those concerns. But also, we're going to end it off with a quick video overview so you can really wrap it all together and see exactly what we're talking about. So, one of the things that we know and that we've seen is that in many communities across the country, it's not entire communities that are engaged in violence, not entire neighborhoods, sometimes not even entire blocks, right? Less than 1% of your population is going to account for more than half of the violence that's occurring. So that's why we need a tool like this so we can be more precise and we're not just running up on anyone and everyone who we think might be a suspect in a crime, right? So this is what we like to try to call precision policing. We're trying to allow your officers to be more efficient, more effective at their jobs, and build better relationships with you all, especially if they know, okay, this is exactly where the shots were fired. We're not going to go to this block, we're not going to go to that block. And in many communities, folks are not seeing police responding to shots. So, like Deb said, in many cases, they don't think they care. When in reality, in most cases, they just don't know that it's happening right then, right there. They only find out after the fact, after someone shows up at the hospital, after they get a 911 call that might be 2 blocks away, or a 911 call that might be 15, 20, 30 minutes later. This is what we're trying to complement. We're trying to help their efforts and make sure that they're doing more with what they have. So, one of the things that we say we're good at and we've seen is that when folks understand that ShotSpotter is in their neighborhood, they become less likely to shoot. When they know and understand, okay, someone's going to respond to this shooting, especially if it's in an area that's covered by ShotSpotter. It doesn't stop them. We won't say that, right? It's not going to be the end all be all to gun violence. There's so many factors that contribute to gun violence. And I'm going to get into that a little bit too. But ShotSpotter is really a tool that can be used to help mitigate some of the violence. And we're in the business of saving lives. First and foremost, above everything else, we want to make sure that we're getting to victims of gun violence before they can bleed out to them. All right? So, when I talked about some of the underlying causes of gun violence, many of you know these already, right? In many cases, it's simple lack of access to basic resources that drive people to become violent, whether that's physically to themselves or to others. And one of the things that we realized is that we were collecting very important data about where gunfire is happening and when, right? Most frequently. So now, we're not just sharing this data with the police department. They're going to get the immediate notifications of when gunshots are fired, right? But there are other stakeholders in your community, potentially credible messenger programs, potentially social workers, potentially folks that are working on social, economic, and health benefits that can be more proactive and seeing exactly where this gunfire is happening. So they can use that insight to figure out, okay, maybe we should go to this block and offer our services in a more proactive way rather than waiting until we get a call for referral, right? Because the police oftentimes have been waiting for 911 calls. Now they don't have to wait. And we're trying to make sure that it's not just the police that are responding to the gunfire and the gun violence, or wrapping our arms around the community in a way that allows folks to, again, use their resources, but also more insight and more information than they probably had before. A lot of folks say that they know where the gun violence is happening. They know when it's happening. But sometimes it's just not as accurate as when you can see the dot on the map and you can see the exact time it happened at night or which day it is. One of the programs that we're building out is a program called Precision Handle with Care, where there are schools across the country that use a Handle with Care program that allows officers to make sure that they're diverting students from the criminal justice system if they've been exposed to specific violence. If they've made a recent arrest of a mom or a dad or someone in the family or the house, they can alert the school and say, hey, this person is probably going to need some sort of help or some sort of resources, but we want to let you know ahead of time so that if they come to school, they act out, this is probably one of the reasons why. Now, we can get a sense of which students are being exposed to repeated gunfire and alert school officials and say, hey, layered on top of the information you're already getting, here are the students that might be exposed to repeated gunfire. And this is probably one of the reasons you might see, maybe they didn't show up the next day, maybe they didn't show up the day afterwards. And now you can use this information to help gain insight and further divert young people away from the criminal justice system. So this is our Data for Good program. These are the different stakeholders that we partner with. And if we come to New Bern, we would absolutely love to work with anyone and everyone who's really cares about driving down the gunfire and the gun violence in this community the way that they know how. So I don't have a slide for this, but I've heard that privacy is a concern. And we do not listen for voices. We listen for loud bangs, booms, and pops that have to be over a certain decibel. And we place our sensors high above the ground, on top of light poles, government buildings, small businesses, folks that agree to allow to put our sensors there. And those are the only things that they're listening for. And we have a sort of algorithm that's been in place for at least a decade now, but it's been improving every single day. But part of what helps improve that is we have folks in what we call incident review centers, one in Newark, California, and one in Washington, D.C. and they sit in front of a computer, and they get alerted when the sensors pick up those gunshots. And this is, the video is going to go over this a little bit too, but I want to say it right here, right now, while I have you. And when they hear the gunshots, they can listen to the sounds of the gunshots, but they can also see the waveform configurations on their screen to better differentiate between gunfire, cars backfiring, fireworks, construction, anything like that, right? And this has been improving steadily, day in, day out, year after year, since it's been in implementation. And that's why we're able to promise over 90% positive, I forget the right term exactly, but accuracy in our contract, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, appreciate it. So we have a less than 1% false positive rate that we don't necessarily always guarantee, but it happens. That's the information that we've been getting back from the departments that we work with across the country. So I want to make sure that we're trying to alleviate your concerns about that, because I live in an area that's covered by ShotSpotter as well, and I would strongly advocate against it if I knew that they were picking up the sounds of voices in their work. So, to recap, before I start the video, we can identify high-risk areas that need more support than others. We can help local authorities, in addition to law enforcement, gain more insights into where they should be deploying their resources. We can monitor trends. When we say monitor trends, again, we can see when gunfire is happening and where it's happening most, so that, say, you're looking for funding for an after-school program or something, now you can say, okay, these schools should probably be prioritized for those after-school programs, because the area surrounding these schools is experiencing the most gunfire most often. And second, developing equitable support strategies. So am I cutting out? Developing equitable support strategies is really making sure that we're prioritizing the areas and the places within the community that need the most support. And this data and information allows us to do that. That's the website for the Data for Good program, and this is the video.
For the sound to travel to each sensor,
Hold on.
effectively You know the fear, gunfire in your neighborhood, but you don't know where it came from. Is it close? Did someone already call 911? Are my family and friends okay? Is there a victim bleeding out? In the event of a shooting, a minute could be the difference between life or death. A life or death situation in your neighborhood. With ShotSpotter, law enforcement agencies are notified within a minute of gunfire, deploying police officers and other first responders to the exact location of the shooting. Their rapid response saves lives and disrupts the gun violence cycle. ShotSpotter's gunshot detection technology starts with acoustic sensors positioned on top of buildings or street lamps. If gunfire is heard in the coverage area, the sensors will detect and timestamp the sound. The precise location is determined by analyzing the time it takes for the sound to travel to each sensor, effectively triangulating the sound. A possible gunshot is analyzed by an actual person in the Incident Review Center. From there, they determine crucial information. Is it a single shooter or multiple? But most importantly, is it actually gunfire? Or is it a firework or a car backfiring? If it is gunfire, an alert is sent within 60 seconds to law enforcement. This is crucial, as over 80% of gunfire goes unreported. When gunfire goes unreported, lives are lost and gun violence becomes normalized.
I do know that in fact there were several lives saved, and one actually in our community due to ShotSpotter. A man was shot on our streets and no one had alerted police to the shots being fired. Therefore, the police showed up and the man was not responsive. So they administered CPR to this man and saved his life. He's alive today because of ShotSpotter.
There are many reasons why gunfire can go unreported. Sometimes community members are not sure if what they heard was gunfire. Perhaps they think someone else will call. Or maybe it's so common that they're desensitized to it. And in some cases, they're simply scared of retaliation. ShotSpotter enables a rapid, consistent, and precise response that can save lives.
We had 732 shootings last year, and the majority of those were picked up by ShotSpotter, which means that we're able to respond quicker. The response, the higher probability there exists that we're going to save a life.
The precise location information provided by ShotSpotter helps investigators collect evidence and, most importantly, shell casings. Evidence that can solve crimes and take dangerous criminals off the streets.
There's just a bunch of data that says that, crime has gone down in the community, and I really attribute that to having ShotSpotter in the community.
Improving the police-community relationship begins with transparency. ShotSpotter's reporting capabilities on response time and ground truth, such as evidence collection, improve police accountability and transparency. That transparency builds trust. Trust that your police department will respond to an emergency as fast as possible. ShotSpotter's gunshot detection system is currently used by more than 150 cities.
With ShotSpotter having been deployed in Greenville for a year now, we've seen significant reductions in overall gunshot wounds within the city of Greenville. This technology stands to make your life safer, to make your family and your friends safer.
And the mainline story is the community feeling super positive about the police department that forever never showed up when there were incidents of gunfire, that now are showing up. And they're showing up quickly, precisely, and respectfully because they want to serve that community.
ShotSpotter is committed to building trust between the police and the community. In the moment of crisis, do you want to worry if the police are responding? Learn more at soundthinking.com.
That's what we have for you. So we want to make sure that we open it up for any questions, anyone here.
So one question that I do have is, could you basically tell me what the average decrease of violence due to firearms would be within the cities that ShotSpotter is activated in?
Varies for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is because communities across the country are so different. They look so different, right? So Chicago, the violence in Chicago looks different than the violence in New York, looks different than the violence in New Bern, looks different than the violence in Los Angeles. So it's difficult for us to show you those averages. But what we've seen is that ShotSpotter has been used as a tool to collect more evidence, which generally leads to more arrests of the folks who are usually committing the gun crime. And I'm sorry, I can't give you like a very specific number. We do have a link on our website that shows you the results in the reductions of crimes, the reductions of gun crime across the country, but also the increases of collecting evidence in addition to the lives saved compared to what it looked like when it was just 911 calls. And in all of those cases, there has been an increase in public safety and a decrease in gun violence. But again, ShotSpotter is not the only thing contributing, right? There are other community members who are working with criminal messenger programs who are actively trying to interrupt that violence when they know something is about to go down, or they know something just happened, and they're going to the hospital to try to stop folks from retaliating. This fits into that overarching public safety gun violence reduction strategy. So we won't ever say that ShotSpotter is the only thing that will reduce gun violence in the community, but it absolutely helps in those efforts.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add one more thing to that as well. It's not just, like we were saying, the name change from ShotSpotter to Sound Thinking. And let me reiterate, ShotSpotter is still the product that we're talking about today. But even though we can't necessarily say that violence has gone down, we could very well say that people that could very well have led to death at a scene may have saved their life, may have made it to the hospital in time. And those are hard to quantify exactly. So in a case like that, I think more lives can be saved and hopefully more crimes can be solved as well. I hope that is a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Response
Excellent
times
question.
absolutely increase. So they're not waiting minutes, they're not waiting, in some cases, hours for a 911 call. They get the ShotSpotter alert within a minute of the ShotSpotter. You next.
I do have one
Excellent
more question. So it is to my understanding that it's not only about the technology, but the individuals behind the scene. Just a great example of the people in the call center itself that send out these things. What degree of training does an individual have to receive in order to be qualified within that call center in order to accurately depict the type of firearm, the firing mechanism within the firearm, or whether it's a firearm itself?
I know they're highly qualified acoustic engineers. Exactly what the schooling is involved, that I don't know the answer to.
Got to get you specific on that. Yeah. But we know that they sit in these rooms for hours on end, listening to the sounds of gunfire and watching the waveform configurations on the screen in front of them before they can even have to pass a test with 99% accuracy before they can be hired. And a lot of these folks do come from 911 call centers, they come from police departments. They're just finding a different way to contribute to public safety. But that 99% number, at least I know that. And I know that they have to sit for at least a week, again, doing exactly what they would be doing in this position, listening to the gunfire, watching it, and they're listening to things that have already happened. They're not like training in the moment. So they're listening to what we've already confirmed. And if they pass that test, then they can move forward with becoming an employee in the discipline center.
My question is, so how do you guys identify the person who shot the fire? Like the devices that you guys put up, are they like cameras? Are they like cameras? How do you guys identify the person who shot the fire? What do you guys do?
So the question was, how do we identify the people who actually shot the gun? And we don't identify those folks. We can only identify the locations in which the shots were fired, and if they decide that if there are cameras in the area that we integrate with, we can sort of make that happen in terms of the cameras integrated with the ShotSpotter technology, but we don't actually identify shooters. We just identify the locations.
Our technology is gunshot detection, not the gun, not the person holding the gun.
So basically, it's just a device to identify voices. It doesn't show any faces.
No, it doesn't show any faces or anything like that. It shows you exactly where the shots have been fired, and it can again direct officers directly to that scene. The Google Maps, the Apple Maps, whatever it is that they have on their phone or on their cars. And if they have other means of seeing what happened in the area, then they will use those tools, but we don't provide those tools. And there was one thing I wanted to say, and I'm forgetting now. But you had a question, right?
In the meantime, we do only have an 82-foot radius where they know exactly where that gunfight has taken place. So that will give them the opportunity to hopefully get to that suspect a whole lot quicker than if they were solely depending on the 911 call. That's a good question.
Okay, so the question was really about the specificity of the location. If she lives at a specific address and she goes outside, fires that gun, are we going to send the cops to the address, or are we going to send the cops to the area? More often than not, we're going to send them to the address. And we won't list the exact address. We'll send them the coordinates, the latitude and longitude coordinates. That's exactly where they'll go. And because the shot was fired outside in the open area, we'll be able to send them to almost exactly where that shot was fired. And if it's in the backyard, we'll send them to the backyard.
How exactly does the program work as far as the radius and what areas? Do you have to have permission from the community, people that live in the community, for it to set up? How is that area covered? What is the radius of the area that you cover when you enter into the system?
Another excellent question. I don't know if everybody heard what the question was, but wondering if there's permissions to where the sensors are placed. So how it works is because we're based on a 1 square mile of coverage, which is kind of typical. So what we do is we'll place approximately 20 to 25 sensors around that 1 square mile. And that's placed by our engineers decide where the best place goes to get the best bang for the buck, if you will. But also we do have to get permissions on top of government buildings, hospitals, schools, lights, stoplights, for example. We do have to get permissions from them as well. Not necessarily from everybody in the community, but where exactly those sensors are placed. And then your question was the radius. Is that where the sensors are placed, or?
Or how far out of the region? You say if you put in a community, will you just focus on one particular area?
Okay.
What's
So,
the radius that is expected?
I think I understand your question. So what we'll do is we work with the city to find out, based on a lot of data over a couple of years, where the most gun crimes have taken place. So based on that data, we'll come up with our engineers in the city to find out where to best place that square mile. Typically, like I said, 1 square mile. And that's where it works best with 1 square mile. You really don't want to go less than that in order for the sensors to work best. So the sensors, like I said, approximately 20 to 25 sensors are placed around the city, around that 1 square mile. If we need more, we'll place more. It's wherever's needed.
So if I'm in one community and say my friend lives in another community,
Yeah.
he hears the gunshot in this community, he won't reach out.
Depends where that coverage area is. So typically we start with the 1 square mile coverage, where the majority of the gunfire has been, where it's been taking place based on the data that everybody's been looking at.
So we would basically place wherever.
Correct. The sensors are placed within a square mile where there's the most gun violence shown.
So would that be a community decision or would it be a data decision?
It's a data and community decision.
So we don't stop at a square mile, depending on how many square miles are necessary to cover the area. That really is sort of a collective decision, I think, between the police department and the data that they're seeing historically, and what they've reported, to be honest. So it's seeing that they'll work, figure out, okay, this is a square mile, but it won't necessarily just be like one box, right? We'll have to figure out where the borders are, based on topography, based on elevation, based on ambient noise and traffic and things like that, and also figuring out exactly where the shooting's been happening historically and when, and how do we better respond to those areas that we know gunfire is happening in most. What we've seen in some cities is it's working so well in one area, okay, we now have proof that it works, so we're going to expand to other areas that are suffering almost as much as these areas were before.
I like to say I think it's beneficial for all of us in our community. It may save some lives, some people still gonna get shot, but it makes it much more safer to be in what I know is going on. Because every time you go around or you step out those times, late at night, all you hear is gunfire. Makes me want to start shooting back if they're shooting at me. It's better that we go along with a system such as this, the more safer we'll be at a point. It's not stopping the ones that we know are carrying weapons and it's not gonna stop. Okay, but it'll make it safer for you. And then you don't have to worry about calling anybody. Somebody's coming. So I think it's a pretty good idea. And, when we do get this going, where the main base going to be? We talk about New Bern, but they're like police department, they got their little area, and we got the area for the cameras and everything else. But where y'all going to be at? Not going to be the same place.
All of them. The company and our employees.
Yeah, I mean, somebody got all that stuff got to go to
So essentially the alerts, the sensors pick up the alerts, and the alerts are sent to our incident review centers. We have one on each coast of the country. They are the ones who then send the alerts to law enforcement. They're sitting in front of computers and looking and hearing the sounds and listening. We also have what we call customer success director, someone who is working actively with the police department to make sure that they're using the technology the best way that they can. So we don't necessarily have our own employees stationed here in the community, but we have someone who will come out and he or she will work in this community in addition to other surrounding communities that have it, just again to make sure that they're using the technology the best way they can. But the folks who are going to be the main users are going to be the police department.
The technology that you use, what is the best you guys experience reading area that you cover? More than my very limited area for this area.
Square mile is bigger than mile.
It does, and it depends on where you're at, and that's you sort of answering that question on yourself. It depends on where you are. It depends on how widespread the violence is, but it also depends on how effective we think the technology is going to be in that area. I was talking to the sheriff earlier, and he was talking about an area like we can't use ShotSpotter out here because the houses are so far spread apart. There's really no density, right? So usually it's better within more dense areas because you sort of know exactly where you're placing the sensors, and the sensors won't be too far apart. And again, we start at a square mile. And if it's determined that it can be more than a square mile, we have that conversation. And I'm sorry, there are certain cities where we'll start with more than a square mile. I bet it's always depending on what is affordable, but also what is needed within the city. You had a question?
Okay, first of all, so how much percentage, how many people in that area can say yes or no before it will actually be allowed to be able to get that into the area?
When you say yes or no, you mean having a ShotSpotter or yes or no to having a sensor placed?
Yes or no to spot to the program altogether. So say if you got 100 people in that area and I'm gonna say 40% of them say, well, I don't want this. So what?
Well, I would encourage you to have that conversation with your city officials, police department, and your city council. So you would advocate against having ShotSpotter in that area. So I don't know if there's a specific number. I think it's going to sway based on what moves them. What we've seen is in most communities, the advocacy is for ShotSpotter and not against it. But I mean, I can't really specifically say that there's a number to answer your question.
So once it gets to us, it's already been approved.
So now my other question is, like with the electric that the city had in New Bern.
Say it again.
The electric, so with the city of New Bern. So the way the meters work is they read from each other. So it's like get. So is that the same way, pretty much this will work?
So essentially, the sensors will triangulate with each other, right? And the gunshot has to be picked up by at least 3 sensors before an alert is sent. And that's one of the best ways also that we can make sure that it's actually a gunshot. Because when a gun is fired, that sound, it goes in usually in one direction. So as long as it's being picked up by the sensors in that area, and with at least 3 of them, we'll notify. will notify the police department of that. So it works, I think, a little bit differently than what you're seeing, talking about with the electric meters, but that's how it works, and that's how it picks up the sound.
Okay. And I'm saying that because I know as far as with electric meters, you said somebody still moving from one place and put it over here, but as long as there's some kind of sensor up in the air, it will be able to hop and pick up. So pretty much, that's pretty much what your system also is doing with seeing how you're being able to connect from here to here to here. So that's pretty much the same thing.
I think so. I think so. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think so. Yeah, I haven't heard that comparison before, so I'm trying to actively make sure that I'm confirming that. But there are sensors that will be placed within at least 1 square mile, and as far apart as necessary or as close as necessary, again, based on the topography and the ambient noise in the area, and based on where they think it'll be most effective. And when a gun is fired, again, minimum of 3 sensors pick up that gunshot before it gets sent to the incident review center, before it gets sent to the police, and that's how it works.
Okay.
All right.
Good evening. Well, they would say first time 4 shots fired. Okay. So, but at the end of the day, you know that we are talking about Greater Duffyfield and this meeting. And I know you're here to give the public some information, but at the end of the day, will it still be the elected officials' decision on what we need to do.
Absolutely. You heard that?
A lot of the shootings that take place around there, did everybody hear me?
No.
They said no.
No.
Okay.
Hello. Most of the shootings that happen around here come from people outside of the neighborhood, right? So if they're shooting, will the ShotSpotter detect their movement when they're shooting?
ShotSpotter does pick up the movement of the gunfire. So if they're in a car and they're just shooting as they're going down the road, those will all be picked up and be time-stamped also. So you'll know where that first shot happened, and as they're moving, they'll all be time-stamped. So you'll know exactly the direction of that gunfire. And also, if it's an automatic weapon or not, if there's more than one shooter, you'll know that as well. Yeah.
But to the, I think the first point you made about shooters coming from outside the neighborhood, we won't be able to tell whether or not they left the neighborhood, and we won't be able to track them after they stop shooting. We'll only be able to track the shots fired. So, only the shots fired. So again, if they're driving and they're shooting while they're driving, we can identify the speed at which the car is moving so that they can see whether that person is walking, running, or driving, usually depending on the miles per hour.
You said also the period of time frame of 60 minutes. How long?
60 seconds. 60 seconds from when the shots are fired to when they get up. Yes.
Very often, it's 30 and 45 seconds. We aren't being promised 60 seconds, and that alerts people. So very often, it's closer to 30 or 45.
I just want to make sure, see how we divide. I just want to make sure I'm understanding you right. So what I hear you saying is you all use science, things like sound waves, the technology of these sensors, in order for them to not really identify a person, but identify a location that will, and your technology will get the police there faster and help them to be able to identify and tag, right, evidence that could help them to solve what just happened, right? Which then means things like us losing little children in our neighborhood and being afraid to speak. This is a way to protect us because we're not in the middle of it, but it provides us some oversight to be able to keep our community safe without feeling like we snitch. Okay.
Thank you for that. And you know, one of the things that we say is time is tissue. Right? So not only does it help protect community members, but we're getting to potential gunshot victims faster to potentially save their lives or get them to the hospital quicker as well.
Good evening. And you probably have already answered this question. I was late. But I would like to know, have you studied this program in another state, another city? And what was your all right, have you tried this in another city? And if so, what was your progress? And what was your percentage of black rapists doing solving the problem? And so that's what I would like to know.
Oh, we've been doing this for over 27 years, perfecting this technology. We're over 150 cities in many of the largest cities across the country. We've got close to a 99% retention rate. So it's working. The cities and towns that employ us aren't leaving. We're staying pretty strong. Do I have an actual number? No, I don't. But they're not leaving because it is working. Like 150 cities in 27 places.
I'm going to bring up a page pretty soon because I feel like a lot of folks are concerned about the actual numbers. I think it's ShotSpotter.com/results or something. You can see the decreases in gunfire, whole gunfires, the increases in evidence collection, and increases in lives saved.
It sounds like you guys put them high enough up that it's hard to do it, but anything's possible in today's world. So if somebody actually destroys one of y'all sensors or shoots it out or tears it up or whatever, you guys, number one, you guys get alerted. And I guess all one of is alerted too, so maybe you can catch the person doing it.
Well, I'm not sure if we'll always be able to catch the person doing it, but yes, we do get notified if the sensor is malfunctioning for any reason whatsoever. We'll notify the police department right away, and we'll have an engineer come out to replace or fix it, or potentially find a new location where it won't get destroyed again.
I was trying not to ask, but I'm going to ask this anyway. Probably one that I should ask the chief later, but I'll just say it now. My concern is this. If it's in a certain area, because I've seen it with drugs and any other thing, if it's in one area, do the public will the public know where those locations are? Where you're going to set those things? Because in my mind, I don't think the public should know. Because if I know it's there, I'm going to go to the next place. That's in my mind. Because I've seen it, drugs move from one area all the way to Broad Street. Then when you leave that area alone, they go right back to that place. So that's my concern about the amount of money spent. So if it's done, you almost said like it's a done deal. Once it gets to y'all, you all, as far as the spotter coming in the work. Okay, I thought that's what she said.
I said, once we're brought into it, typically the decision has been made. And I'm talking about a contract. Right now, we're just discussing.
I got you, but that's my main thing. It's not bring it, not to have it come in. But I'm thinking most of the time when you bring stuff in like that, it's like a advisory to the public. Sometimes it gets to the news or whatever. But I'm thinking if I know where it is, I'm not going to be around it.
Right.
I'm not going to do my dirt around on where I know it is. So my thing is if the city has it to better the community or to protect or save the community, I don't think the public should know the pinpoint where it is because it'll be money spent, but it's not a void, it's no good. If I know where it is, I'm not going to be there.
Right.
So that's a great point. No one will know exactly where the sensors are, not even the police department. We keep those specific locations confidential. However, they know the general area. They'll know they'll sort of have an idea of where the borders are. And I think it's important to inform the community because in many cases, community members do want to know that there's an extra tool, helping them in the community. But also, like if I'm a shooter, isn't it better for me to not be in that area? I think, right? I don't think shootings are always determined by where ShotSpotter is. Sometimes it is, absolutely. I mentioned that earlier. But a lot of times when we get these tit for tats and we get in these back and forths, It's just going to happen where it happens. So that's sort of part of the idea. You're right, we're not going to release the exact sensor locations to anyone, but we try to inform the community or, the general areas and neighborhoods where.
Thank you all for coming out this evening to voice your concerns and ask questions. I'm going to put the questions out here that was given to me by some of my constituents. And one of the main questions that I received was that, and you kind of alluded to it somewhat in your presentation from the beginning, that they were afraid of the system being put in place by the city because they were afraid that if a shot is fired in an area, police come to that area, and just say, for instance, they're a teenage child or 2 or 3 teenagers together or young adults together, and the police is going to harass those citizens, and they're innocent citizens. And that was some of the questions, that was one of the main questions that was asked to me. So that is something that I...
Absolutely, and I appreciate you asking that, because that is a concern in many communities, right? And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is being able to work with the police departments to devise a policy and how exactly they're going to respond to shootings. One of the things that we found, and yes, on rare instances, we have caught suspects in the moment, in the act, but the vast majority of cases, the suspect is already gone, right? So we understand that. First priority is saving a life if someone is bleeding out. Second priority is collecting evidence if there's evidence of the case. And of course, if you're in the moment and you see a suspect still shooting, like that's when you move forward on that person. But if no one is showing any signs of being actually involved in the shooting, I mean, most cases, like, people won't actually stay in the exact area if they're done. So we're going to actually ask you to see if you have any ideas on how what your response would look like in the shooting or something like that.
Sure. So I think it's a great question, Alderman. One of the things that I want to remind everybody is, regardless of whether or not ShotSpotter is here or not, our deployment strategy is based on the Fourth Amendment, based on reasonable suspicion and probable cause. So we already respond to shots fired when we're in the area. The day before I actually gave the presentation before the Board of Aldermen, we had arrested a 14-year-old that had an automatic weapon who was firing that. So when we respond, we're very well trained in trying to identify what reasonable suspicion we have to stop anyone. And if we don't have that, we're not going to stop anyone. So I don't want anybody to believe that all by a sudden ShotSpotter shows up and now we have a different deployment strategy. It's the same one we've always had. This just gives us an additional ability to be on scene quicker and faster. A couple other things that were brought forward, but I don't think maybe the dots were not connected. When firearms are being used, there is evidence that's left behind by way of shell casings. We can link a shell casing to a specific firearm, and we utilize a product called NIVIC, which we have an agreement with other agencies that allow us to import our ballistic evidence into NIVIC so that we can tell where that ballistic evidence came from. What gun did it come from? There's also gunshot residue that's left behind by the shooter, and we have capabilities of identifying, did this person fire a gun recently? So all of these investigative strategies and methods we're already using. This is just going to advance that, and I hope I answered that question.
And another, it's not a question, a statement, Chief. I just want the citizens to know, because I've had this question asked to me as well. I want the citizens to know, just because if the ShotSpotter is approved and it's implemented, that
That's not going to stop police presence in our neighborhoods. Okay? The police is going to still be within our neighborhoods, monitoring. Am I correct?
That is absolutely correct. Our deployment will not change. We will consistently be in the places that the statistics tell us where we
No, not where the statistics of this ShotSpotter tell you where you need to be when a shot is fired. I'm talking about period. Patrolling every day. This is not going to stop patrolling of the police within our community. I just want the citizens to know this. And that's why I directed to you like that, because you are the chief. And one thing that I think that this technology, along with police patrolling, is going to keep our community safer. I'll be honest about this. At first, I had some reservations about it. And I heard your presentation given to the Board of Aldermen, and for this to be another source put in place to help our citizens, to keep our citizens safe within our communities, I am all for it. Now, I would like to, Chief, and I know this is getting off the topic here, and I'm not going to say anything else out there. Chief, I would like to see more police presence in the communities. What happened to the motorcycles? What happened to the foot patrol? What happened to the police actually stopping and talking to citizens, engaging with citizens, and getting the citizens involved? I would love to see more of that, and I think that would deter a lot of crime as well.
So I don't want my last statement to be misconstrued. We have officers in every one of our 6 community policing districts across the board. So they're there regardless as to whether or not the crime rate is high or low. Places like Carolina Colors and Taberna and those places, low crime rate. We still have officers there. We still have a community engagement, a need to be present, mandate, and a mission. What I'm trying to say is, beyond having officers in every community policing district, we backfill with additional staff based on need. That's why we are evidence-based and intelligence-led. We are constantly tracking all of our data to give us the best insight as to where we need to be based on that data. So don't assume because we didn't get a call for service or stats are low in a particular, that's not the case. We are still there. And the other part about that is in every one of our policing districts, we have a supervisor that's responsible for that, and we do track the number of times our officers actually get out of their car, do walking patrols. Now, we are like almost every other police department in the nation. We are struggling with trying to maintain the patrol or our sworn staff. We have been roughly 10% down in the numbers of officers. So the ability to engage in more proactive style of policing is a bit of a challenge, but we still track that and we still do that. And I will say, of all the community policing districts that we track, the greatest number of officers that are engaged in bike patrol and in foot patrols are occurring in this community right here. And that's what I can say about that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Chief, I would like to say, I've seen the officers on foot patrol. I've seen them talk to the kids. I've seen them talk to other people getting out their cars, being friendly. So I commend that because they've been doing that.
Thank you.
And the chief was at our last meeting with the officers talking to us about that. And so, I mean, there really is a presence happening.
Question.
I've heard some wonderful things about ShotSpotter. What are some of the negatives? Everything has the positives and negatives. What are some of the negatives that come along with this wonderful program?
great question. I don't want to make sure we come here. But one of the things that I've seen at times is it's not being used effectively. It's not being used in the right way. There are a couple of communities that we have to constantly go back to because we're seeing that officers are not logging in, they're not actually going to where shots are being fired, and not using the technology effectively. So it really is also incumbent upon the community to make sure that the police are doing their jobs, but it's also up to us to build those relationships and making sure that they're following the guidelines and the policies that we've set forth, right? Because there's no point in spending the money for something that you're not going to use.
Right.
So that's one of the potential negatives is making sure that's being used effectively. Another negative is at times it can take a while to actually set up because when we're asking people for permissions for the sensors to be placed, either on their businesses or on their buildings, sometimes they may go back and forth as to whether or not they actually want it there, right? So that can extend the period into which it's actually deployed, but we won't actually start our implementation until all the sensors are set up in that way.
So that's a great question, and this sword is going to cut in two different directions. One of the issues from a negative, from our perspective, is cost. I have to make a cogent and reasonable argument to the Board of Aldermen that the monies, and it's just south of $50,000 per year, to fund this. And so with every dollar spent in one direction is $1 not spent in another direction. So that is part of what I have been trying to do with data. I don't want anybody to say, just trust me. I'm the chief, just trust me, this is a good program. I have to be able to prove it's a good program. So the sword cutting in the opposite direction is ShotSpotter actually is giving us a discount. It is less money in New Bern than what they're paying for in Greenville. And the reason is we're a smaller municipality and they recognize that and they try to offset some of these costs. One of the other things that I intend on doing is going to some of the stakeholders within our own community that have a vested interest in the reduction in violent crime and trying to get them to assist us in the management and the payment of this program, because it's going to save them a lot of money and it is advantageous for them to become partners with us. And there's a number of stakeholders in the city of New Bern that I will be going to and hoping that they would assist us in offsetting that cost.
So you all did state that ShotSpotter would be able to communicate with medical facilities in the area as well. Being within the medical field, sometimes communication, especially dealing with GSWs, can be kind of offset to where you don't know how to treat that certain injury at that certain time. Is there any type of algorithm where communication between first responders can possibly be shown if in that moment first responders are not able to communicate through radio or anything else due to the danger that's being provided in that situation?
They're essentially asking if first responders can also get like the notifications that law enforcement would get. And I don't know. I believe that in some places there may be an agreement set up, but I'm not sure.
I think the permissions need to be given by the police department from what I can find out.
Right. Well, here's the thing. EMS doesn't patrol. EMS is stationed and they wait to be dispatched, but police officers do patrol. And the first task when we arrive on the scene is rendering aid to the injured. So that information is relayed immediately to dispatch. Our dispatch dispatches for EMS. So there isn't a transference of information from one dispatcher to another. It's the same dispatcher dispatching to EMS, and so they are retrieving information from the first responder LE, law enforcement, to the first responder ME, medical personnel, as they come in. So there is a, I wouldn't say seamless, but less confusing process to get medical personnel on staff and for them to better understand what they're going to be dealing with upon their arrival.
The question I'm about to ask, we talked about $50,000. See, when we first began a while back, I thought it was higher than that, but are we still going to get a $50,000 savings for next year? The following year will it still go down?
So the initial cost is $69,800. I might be off by 100 or two, but part of that is the transition between our records management system, our CAD system, and the ShotSpotter technology. That has to be built in so that they talk to one another. But for ShotSpotter, it is the consistent pricing. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Yes. So it's the first year, ShotSpotter is charging us the same amount, but we have to put in an additional fundage for the built-in infrastructure that their program and our CAD system will work better together.
You're talking about if you decide to go with the interface, you don't need to.
Okay, so my question is, are we actually going to be locked into a contract? Suppose something happens and we don't see between the police and this program where it's actually working for our community. Are we actually going to be locked into a contract? Or how many years will we can actually be able to get out of it?
To my knowledge, I think we're looking at a 3-year contract for that. So, but after the 3 years, you know, there's...
You're locked into anything after that.
Can you say that again, please?
You're not locked into, I'm sorry.
If this is approved, it is for a 3-year contract, and after that, there's no lock to the contract. We can negotiate, I guess it's year to year, or however that's going to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear it because I heard her say.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure it was the contract, not the money. Because I started grinning then, but I got happy, you know. Then after 3 years, I had to pay some more.
Oh, no. I'm glad you confirmed that.
Yeah, that's why I had to ask that.
I wish that was the case too.
I know, I'm sorry.
So unless there's no more questions, I know we've got, oh, we have another question?
Yeah.
One here, then one.
Oh, okay.
I just want to know the ability within the area, the square mile, how long is that one area, that one area, that's 1 square mile for the duration of the contract, or is it going to be something that's going to be very easily moved from one area to the other? How does that work?
If the city decides on one particular square mile.
So it will stay there?
If they decide, whatever it decides on, if they decide on 1 square mile to start off, and then they realize within that contracted time that, you know what, over here, we're not really having any issues. Could we move it over a little bit? We can do that.
That would be no charge.
If, of course, it's the same, if you say, we signed up for 1 square mile here, and now we need to go way over here and change everything, then that would be, that may be something. If you have to move things over a little bit, we can do it.
This program, I have a friend in Raleigh, Durham area, Greensboro, and this program is up there. And he said that the community that he's in was a crime statistic. Every night that had somebody shot, killed, or murdered. He said that this program that they installed in their neighborhood was very excellent. And it has been on about 3 months prior to y'all, when y'all started. And he says that he can see the the difference in the crime rate. But what it is, they'll run it out of your vicinity, and then they'll go somewhere else. But he said it was a beautiful thing to have. So we have to think about that too.
I think we'll end it there.
One more question.
One more question.
So I seen on your slides that you had up there that you had Greenville, North Carolina up there, right?
Right. Yes.
So you just recently got into Greenville? So
No, they've been there 7 years.
Yeah.
they've been there for 7
Yeah.
years? So has it improved? Greenville always got some shooting to sell on the news.
Unfortunately, it won't stop, we can't stop people from shooting. Hopefully, it could definitely save some lives and prevent or subside some shooting, that's for sure.
Okay.
It's in all of it.
But
Most
the
of
biggest thing you're trying to convey to the community is quicker response will cut a lot of stuff out. That's what you're saying, save lives.
Yes.
All right, that's
Yes.
it. Can we close the questions out?
All right, well, I do want to say thank you so very much for coming out tonight. We certainly hope that we were able to provide you enough information. I do want to wish all the veterans in the room happy Veterans Day. If you're a Marine, happy birthday. Tomorrow is the 225th birthday of the U.S. Marine Corps. So happy birthday to the Marines. For those of us that are Army veterans, we're a whole lot older than you are. But that's nonetheless. So happy Veterans Day, and look forward to seeing everybody back in this place next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.